How can businesses finance the sustainable transformation of the African job market and fuel innovation? Our correspondent, Tom Canetti, met with Sanda Ojiambo, Assistant Secretary General and CEO of the UN's Global Compact System, the world's largest corporate sustainability initiative that pushes businesses to follow the UN's Sustainable Development Goals to discuss the future of Africa's workforce and the economy.
Sanda Ojiambo, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
One of the recurring themes over the summit has been working with Africa rather than in Africa. Can you elaborate on that for us, please?
So let me take a couple of issues. If you looked at energy and renewables, which is a huge business investment opportunity, African continent has an abundance of solar energy, strong hydro and geothermal opportunities. So really those looking to invest in energy need to see how to work with Africa to be able to build both capacity as well as, products that are, that will drive forward renewable energy investments. Of course, a critical topic is the question of critical minerals, because they're so important both for the digital transformation as well as for their innate value and, every other piece of equipment that uses some of these of metals. But of course, here the bigger question is not simply the investment, but, value addition, beneficiation, and more equality, of African economies and countries in this whole trade and business around critical minerals. So many other areas, Africa has the largest consumer market. It has a growing labor market. It has a demographic dividend in its young people. So it's truly, as we say, the moment to do business with Africa. Make sure that African business and political leaders are at the table. We're looking at value addition. We're looking at building skills.
So Africa has the youngest population of any continent in the world. Can you explain to us how this young population can be utilized for economic growth?
Absolutely. I mean, the first is, as you said, it's a population to be utilized. It's often seen as a liability. I think it's one of Africa's greatest assets. You have a youthful population at a time when around the world, population growth is declining. You also have a population that, by and large, at least for urban youth, are very digitally savvy. The mobile phone is so ubiquitous here. People are on their mobiles. They're driving e-commerce. They're using mobile money. The young people are highly engaged in, small and micro business areas, etc. And so, for me, the youth population is one that is ready to work, can fill in lots of gaps. Mobility, I think, is absolutely important. We're working a lot with the AFCFTA, and I think the question is, how do we create an African continent where there is mobility of goods, services, and people so they can find jobs as and where, things are possible. So I think it's more about looking at young people, looking at mobility as an asset for what we need to do.
Finally, de-risking Africa has been another popular theme over the weekend. Can you explain to us what investors mean by de-risking the continent?
There is a perception that Africa is, first of all, a risky population to invest in. And, I think a lot of entities and institutions, including the ECA with whom, we're working with, have spent a lot of time making sure that we can challenge that perception. We can't necessarily change what credit rating agencies say, but there's a couple of things that are really important. One is using available African capital to invest in the continent and to demonstrate that the continent is investable. So I attended the launch of a liquidity facility being put together by AUDA NEPAD, part of the African Union, as well as the Association of African Multilateral Development Banks. And it was impressive to see them come together, leverage finance to demonstrate that we should be investing in Africa and it is not a risk. There have been lots of discussions around leveraging philanthropic capital to go in and also help de-risk. But the other part was just, really focusing on how Africa itself, business leaders, political leaders, African capital, can go in and kick off projects and project financing. Lots has been said about pension funds. There's massive pension funds, around the African continent from some of the larger economies. How do we put those to use in terms of, development, sustainable business-related investments?
Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.